And what kind of player am I? Am I an offensive man or a defensive man? That's right, I'm neither. I play my opponent. If he likes to attack, I force him to defend himself. If he's a cautious man, I draw him into dangerous waters. See, you get so frustrated playing defensive positions, you make stupid moves you never make if you were thinking. When you come here, boy, check that shit at the door,
I'm at the top of my game, cut the check. Somebody better king me, I'm the best. Let's play a game of checkers. Better yet, the game don't love nobody. Let's play chess.
I keep forgetting when I'm in love anymore. I keep forgetting.
All right, here we are for episode 19 of the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. Today, or I should say tonight, my guest is Marcus from Aquarian Anarchy. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, man. How are you?
Well, I am actually doing pretty good. Changed up my schedule, so I'm doing the whole podcasting thing and about to work the campaign and everything full time. So, trying to get into that and work my new sleep schedule because I'm never going to sleep again now. But and then I found this weird peanut butter stout.
That's
actually, I was like, wow, this is so odd. I have to try it because I like weird things, and it tastes like I'm drinking a Reese's peanut butter cup with a bit more alcohol.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny. My wife and I just had an anniversary yesterday, and we celebrated with some orange rum. So I like the different tastes too.
I also just got a vanilla porter. Again, something that I haven't seen. So I was like, I got to try it, and
Nice.
We'll see how that works out too.
Cool. Nice. I can't drink a lot of alcohol because I got gout and shit like that. But you know, it is what it is. And but I like my rums and I like the harder liquors a lot. But I'm a weed guy, man. I like the cannabis. So
I prefer to eat it for pain, for like back pain and stuff. But
right.
My brother smokes it. I can't smoke because I have chronic lung deterioration and respiratory arrhythmia. So smoke is way too heavy for me. But the CBD, I can rub it on my knees, and when I want to feel something, I eat an edible and I have a good night and I feel a hell of a lot better. So
for sure,
which is something that definitely needs to be. I'd prefer just decriminalize it altogether. Yeah. I know legalizing becomes an issue of, all right, we're going to regulate it and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm like, or you could just let it be.
You can let adults be adults.
Yeah. Like, I don't want to make moral decisions for adults that can make those decisions for themselves. I think we get into a bad area when we do that.
For sure. And I think that's one of the crossover points between conservatives and anarchists is most of the time when you sit down with a actual conservative, somebody who actually believes in limited government, and anarchists believe in no, and I call myself an anarch, which is because an anarchist is somebody that is practicing anarchy, and I'm not practicing anarchy because I don't have it. But an anarchist is somebody who is self-owned. But the real conservatives that believe in conservatism understand that that you can't dictate how people live their lives. You just can't. And my understanding of conservatism comes from like Glenn Beck or those sorts of conservatives who largely want to leave people alone to be adults and just don't want the government in their pockets pulling out all their money. So
honestly, I'd say that's where I'm at too. I think as a conservative myself, I think we get screwed, like we were previously talking, when we we try to force politicians try to force their way into cultural and social arguments rather than letting that be fought on the battlefield where it belongs. Like, I'm a big fan of, you don't send your navy to go fight a land war in Asia, and you don't send your army to go, your cavalry to go ride horses in the middle of the ocean and fight a naval battle. So why would I want politicians to be engaging in culture? As a matter of fact, I see, based on how they market themselves and how they act, I see very little culture there whatsoever. They all seem either incredibly manufactured, or they actually are as vanilla as they pretend to be, which is worse.
Right. The problem with politicians, though, is you can always tell when they're lying because their mouths are moving. And Emma Goldman, who is an influence on me, she's more of an anarcho-communist, and I'm more of a capitalist. But Emma Goldman said that that politicians promise you heaven before the election and give you hell after, and I've seen that time and time and time again. So you're running for office, right? I can't remember what. I remember knowing at one time. What are you running for?
I will be running for the New Hampshire's 1st congressional district for the House of Representatives. Nice. There's a Democrat here right now, and he very much believes in forcing his social doctrine down other people's throats. I'm more of a do whatever the hell you want to do. Like, I don't care if you're gay and you want to marry your boyfriend, husband, whatever, that's fine. You want to wear a dress, that's fine. You want to identify as an attack helicopter, that's fine too. I like Transformers, so I don't mind. But at the same time, I'm like, and I say that to conservatives too, like, that's fine. You want to be a practicing Christian, and you believe that marriage is between man and woman, then go to a church that believes the same as you. That's fine. As far as the government is concerned, the only role for government is just in recognizing that the union, that two consenting adults made a union between each other, and that neither one of them is forced into the situation. As far as I'm concerned, that's it. That's where the government needs to draw the line. Anything beyond that, you're starting to get into telling people what they can and can't do, and the decisions that they're allowed to make and what they're not allowed to make. And I think that's a bad place to be.
So I guess I got to dive into you a little bit, man. I mean, that's what government does. They force that, government. When you ask somebody what is government, generally they come up with something that they create on the moment. But generally, if you look it up in the dictionary, you're going to have like a state or a organization or whatever, and then you look up a state, and a state includes the word government. So you can't. There is
government. Government is the formal structure of force.
Yeah, for
it
sure.
Would be the greatest. I think if we were to boil it down, the greatest structure of force, a formalized structure of force. Because I don't think we could boil it down to anything romantic. I should say anything romantic because one of my tenets is there is no power to the people by which that power must pass through government in the hopes that it be benevolently returned back down to the citizenry. So
yeah, for sure. And government doesn't do that. My personal favorite definition of government is one that I heard from Adam Kokesh, who's a friend of mine. For your listeners that don't know who I am, I was the press secretary for Adam Kokesh for like 3 years when he was running for president as a libertarian candidate. And if you ever saw him in the last 3 years on any interview, I'm the one who scheduled that. Probably his biggest interview was with Judge Andrew Napolitano on Fox Business He was it was actually on Kennedy's show, but Judge Napolitano was the guest host and Adam was his guest. But
Okay.
Adam's definition of government is the territorial monopoly of force and violence. And I think that is absolutely what it is. For those of you that are like anarchist, is that like, Antifa? No, Antifa are like far left communists who are trying to pretend like they're anarchists and make us look bad. Anarchists are people that believe that you own yourself. They believe that you are in charge of yourself. Some anarchists call themselves, like myself, call themselves anarchs. Some people call themselves voluntarists. It doesn't really matter what they call themselves. The ultimate goal is self-ownership, is the ethical belief that it isn't right to hurt people. It isn't right to aggressively cause violence. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm a pacifist. You come to my house, try to hurt my family, you're going to get shot. That's the end of the day. but I also don't believe that you should go and hurt other people. And Lysander Spooner said that there is virtually, and this is a paraphrase, but there's virtually no difference between government and a band of burglars. The only difference is that the band of burglars doesn't have political power, and people don't believe in it, because really, statism is a religion. And anytime you have any doubt of that, just watch them. Larkin Rose put out a really good speech about that years ago and just broke it down. I mean, everything that is statism, the flag, the superhuman powers, the everything that government has is religious. And we had on our show, we've had a couple of Christian ministers. One of them is a guy that I've become pretty good friends with, named Mark Kreslins. And he said that, because you talked about conservatives and conservative values, he said Christians should be anarchists because Christian doctrine teaches nonviolence. It teaches peace. And the government is everything that is not that. What 10 Commandment does the government not break almost on a daily basis?
Yeah. I'd honestly say I can't even say adultery, because the government sleeps with you. It definitely sleeps with you. You can't escape it. There's nowhere to go. It can tell you what you can and can't do in your house. And if you it really does regulate everything that you do. There is a regulation for that. We used to joke about that on active duty, that there is always a regulation for everything that you do. Mm-hmm. But in civilian life, that is definitely true.
Yeah.
There is somebody, and I can't remember who it was, but the idea of morally drank maybe enough. Morally omnipotent busybodies.
For sure.
The idea that a robber baron will be satiated when he's achieved his goal, at least momentarily. A morally omnipotent busybody sees himself as self-righteous and will always push forward towards what they believe is a morally infallible goal. And I think that's where we're at right now. And the pendulum swings both ways throughout time, just in this country. So don't have to go through a history lesson for too many people, because nobody reads books anymore. But just throughout, we've gone in cycles in our own country. For instance, Republicans are supposed to be the party of Lincoln. Lincoln actually violated many, many conservative tenets to free the slaves. And people would say, it was for the greater good. But a lot of the stuff that he did, never, the dial, once you ring that bell, it's been rung and you can't unring it. So And that's gone, I'd say just about every one of our quote unquote great presidents also did the same thing. Violated every tenet and law and restriction on government that we've had over the years, and they've gotten away with it because I think as a populace we fail to be involved in our communities. And if you fail to be involved in your communities and you fail to solve things at a local level, then that cry for government sounds pretty freaking reasonable. And there's really nothing you could say about it, because you can't sit there and go, oh, well, this is a community issue. You can't say that if you refuse to be involved in your community, because you've given up that position.
Yep. And for me, one of the things that I believe in is localism. I'm with you there. I believe that the best, people constantly, they're like, okay, you believe that you shouldn't have government, but where are you going to, stop people from doing bad things? And the answer to that, same place that you do now. It's not like somebody in Washington, D.C. comes to your house when you get robbed. For that matter, the police in your community, what they'll generally do when you get robbed is they'll come in, they'll look around your house, make sure you don't have something they can bust you for, and then they'll fill out some paperwork, and that's the last they'll see of them. And so if they've left without, raping your kids or destroying your life, blowing up your house or shooting your dog, generally it ends there, and that's all that happens. It's not somebody from Washington, D.C. that comes in to do that. In a society that I would envision, and that people like Murray Rothbard talked about, you would have competing police forces in a local level that would, be competing for your money. They want to be known as the law enforcement portion of your local community that is most successful. They've stopped the most crime, caught the most people, whatever it is. And then they could put that on their billboard and say, you want to call us instead of calling Jimmy down the road, because Jimmy ain't done nothing and he's hooked up with the mob. That kind of local community is how we get to real freedom. The farther you take it away from the individual, the farther you're going to get into somebody who's a megalomaniac trying to destroy your life. So I'm with you.
Sorry, just sharing this again, this time through Periscope. If anybody wants to see the full episode, you're going to have to come to the channel and see our conversation for yourself.
Right.
But so I completely agree. The only thing when it comes to police forces, and because police you have a monopoly on force as a cop, or you're not supposed to if we actually followed the Constitution, the Second Amendment, the way and the writings of the founders, the way it was actually written. But cops have a monopoly on force. If we restricted that force to a outlined sector of things and didn't have tens, hundreds of thousands of laws and regulations infringing upon every sector of your own life, honestly, we'd be able to have cops and it not be an issue. The problem that I see is originally we had sheriffs in this country. We had sheriffs and marshals. Sheriffs and marshals were elected.
Power.
Yeah, they were elected. So the power came from us. And if you didn't like how they acted, you could remove them the same way. Now we're in a situation where that they are no longer elected. They're appointed, and they're appointed by a politician. So their loyalty is not to the people that they should be serving and the communities that they're in. It's to the politician that appointed them. Yeah. Which is why over this past 12 months so far, we've seen every overstep by police physically possible. It's no longer theoretical. The slippery slope argument is not just a theoretical argument anymore. It's now fact, and we just watched it happen in real time. We watched people getting yanked out of their cars for praying. We watched people getting thrown down on the pavement for not wearing a mask in the park, being chased by cops because you're jogging outside alone without a mask.
Right.
And just stupid stuff. So, I mean, we watched all this stuff happen. None of these laws and regulations went through the legislative process, so they're not laws. They're edicts from a mayor or a governor who doesn't have the ability to act with the penalty of law, but yet fines and prison time has been levied and property's been confiscated, which is another issue that the government loves to do, is confiscate your property so that they can auction it off and make money off of it, or just outright take it so that the mayor gets to drive around that drug dealer's new Ferrari. Sure.
That's what they do, man. And we, one of the things that was really enlightening, we had a conversation on Aquarian Anarchy with Dan Taxation is Theft Behrman. And if anybody has a chance to go check him out, go check him out. He's awesome. One of the things that's interesting is government just does what the hell it wants. Go find, do me a great favor. I would love, because it'll win you a bunch of money, because there's people that have offered a reward for this. Go find the law that says you have to pay taxes federally. Go find it.
There is one.
There is not one. It does not exist. So they
As a matter of fact, who was the guy that actually beat the IRS in that court case?
I don't remember.
There was a guy that successfully beat the IRS in the court case, and they sealed the. I think they actually arrested him for violation of a gag order because they sealed the court documents and shit. And he tried to make and he said screw you, and he released the damn thing anyways, and they couldn't stop him from doing it.
Right.
That is awesome. I gotta give him credit, because
for sure.
I've been saying, if you want your freedom back, it's going to take sacrifice. And that means you're going to sacrifice money, or you're going to sacrifice time, or eventually it's going to get to the point where you're going to stand out there and you're going to be lined up online deciding whether or not you're willing to take that next step. I don't advocate for that next step. I don't want that to happen. I would rather people just, hey, you know what? Get a tort lawyer. There are plenty of lawyers out there that have no soul and are perfectly happy to sue anyone you want.
Right.
Pay them enough money, get enough people together, and start a tort suit against the government. Yeah,
for sure. And
every single overreach, every time they step on your toes, every time they mess with you, sue them. That's the only way. If you get it into the courts and you get and you force judges, and then when judges step out of line, you sue the judge too.
The one problem with that, though, is all of those people work for the government. At the end of the day, every one of them work for the government, and you cannot go to the system that is itself and ask it to help you. It's not going to work. One of the things that people should familiarize themselves, if they really want to get into the law and those kinds of ideas, they should familiarize themselves with a particular philosopher named John Locke, who really is the father of much of the freedom thought that we think of today. Everything from, he was an influence on everyone from, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, all of the founding fathers.
And Montesquieu.
Right. But also all the way up to modern anarchists like Murray Rothbard, and he was an influence on Spooner and so, but Locke talked about law extensively, and he said that there are two kinds of laws, and the first kind of law is natural law. And generally with natural law, it's stuff you really don't need to be told about, like don't kill people, it's bad to kill people, don't take their stuff, that kind of thing. Is generally people are like, okay, that you're right. And what that does is it violates, as Murray Rothbard pointed out, it violates self-ownership. If you take the fruits of somebody else's labor, then you have taken a piece of who they are, because they put their own self-ownership into building that. So And
Yep.
and if you kill them, obviously you've taken away their self ownership, so on and so forth. So that's natural law. The one that we're generally talking about is civil law. And Locke said that there are two primary ways that you can tell if a civil law is just, and those are: one, you have to be able to change it. If you one of the examples I like to use for a good civil law is a speed limit. And I'll get to that in a moment. But the other, so you have to be able to change it. If you don't like the way that law reads, you can get a bunch of people together in your community and get it changed. The second thing that makes a good civil law is that it's known. It has to be documented. You have to be able to readily get to it. And ultimately, the majority of the laws we have in this country are not, and frankly, all over the globe, are not just laws. They're not just civil laws because those two things generally are not true. But one example of a good civil law is a speed limit sign. It's posted so everybody knows that, hey, you're driving down the road, it's 55. If you're driving 55, then you have made it to the limit. And if you don't like it, let's say your road, it has a speed limit of 40 and you got a bunch of kids on it, you can petition your local neighborhood or your local government to lower that speed limit because you got a bunch of kids on your street, and they can do that. So that's a good example of a just civil law. Now compare that to tax law that has books upon books upon books that you could spend your entire life reading and not know how to fill out your tax papers.
I guarantee most people, I have to file my taxes special every year because we have different sorts of income coming from different states and shit. Mm-hmm. And I have read as much as I think I possibly could, and still be able to maintain a reasonable understanding of it. Right. And I've barely scratched the surface.
Yeah,
I barely scratched the surface. I think, like, my solution to the tax code was boil it down flat 10% across the board. Mm-hmm. No ifs, ands, or buts, no loopholes, no nothing, and a 1% sales tax. Leave it at that. Leave it at that. That way, you could fit all of that on a single page.
Mm-hmm.
On a single page.
At least that would be a valid civil law. Because you could have access to it and you could change it.
Yeah. Right. And the average
it'd still be theft.
It would.
Right. Yeah, it would still be theft.
I agree.
But at least it would be a valid civil law.
Yeah. Like, honestly, if I could reasonably convince people that a sales tax would be the best form of tax if there is going to be a tax, I would. Unfortunately, I don't think most people are not there. I'd say about 98% of the population is not there.
Yeah, and let's be clear that 98% of the status. Yeah, and 98% of the people out there are posting cat videos and talking about dumb crap all damn day. Let's be clear. And to be honest, those people have a little bit of an edge on us because we talk about these idiots in Washington, D.C. constantly. So that at least they're doing something that's fun. Talking about the cat. But we bitch about these idiots doing stupid crap. But that's because I have a passion for trying to set the world free. And but at the end of the day, when it comes to sales tax, I'm kind of in the Ron Paul boat. No one in their right mind would ever elect me for anything. Let's just be clear. There's no way, because I'm going to tear everything apart. I get to any office, anywhere, I'm going to be like, how can I rip this shit apart? So that's because I don't believe in government. I think that it is a band of criminals, or what Thomas Paine called the no abilities. And that's what he called the nobles. and by the way, Thomas Paine's my hero. I love that dude. He's one of my favorites in history. But at the end of the day, I'm with Ron Paul though. Anything, because like Murray Rothbard talked about, that we need to speak radically and act pragmatically, and that's a paraphrase of what he said I believe he was at a Michigan Libertarian Party meeting in like 1988, I think, and he was talking about that when you believe that taxation is theft, you say taxation is theft. And then if you're in office and you can get a 1% reduction in taxation, take it. You act pragmatically. Take everything you can. Anything that moves in the direction towards freedom, use that, get that, support that, do what you can. But never stop saying taxation is theft. So I'm with Ron Paul.
I think that's the biggest failure of libertarians.
Oh,
everybody loves Ron Paul. Everybody loves it. I find most people to be libertarian. I find them to fall off when it gets to the rip the Band-Aid off sort of and let the chips fall where they may sort of mentality, because that scares the shit out of people.
It does scare
the shit out of people. That is one of those, like, people don't, when you grow up your entire life with structure, and then all of a sudden somebody just goes, nah, we're going to get rid of that. You don't need that. It's like, it gives you that feeling of you're jumping out of a plane without a parachute.
For sure.
That's I understand that's where most people are. And
right. And that's because
I think it needs to be a pragmatic voice.
Right. And that's because the Libertarian Party doesn't have any clue on how to, one, market itself, or two, win elections. They have no idea how to do either one of those things. And that was proven out by the last election cycle when they threw their nose up at Adam Kokesh, who had an actual pragmatic plan on how to deliver a libertarian society. And what they do is, by explaining to people how they could do that, is very simple. By explaining to people that you're not ripping away the Band-Aid, that you're not taking that stuff away. All you're doing is reallocating the power from people 2,000 miles away in Washington, D.C. to their local communities. Libertarianism is about returning power to the people. It is about returning the power and decisions to those local governments. Get it as close to the people as you possibly can. And that way it unites conservatives and liberals together. It brings them together, because people in California can do whatever the hell they want to, and people in Texas can do whatever the hell they want to, and they can coexist because they need trading partners. It is always about and it's always about peace is always based on the idea of trade. If, the reason that China's not got jiggy with us and started launching bombs and vice versa towards China is because we need each other economically. And the same thing would be true of local communities. You can't, Adam was fond of saying that, and to be clear, Adam's Jewish. And he said, if you want to start your little neo-Nazi commune over in the way where you don't allow black people in there, you don't allow Jewish people. Okay, I'm good with that. I'm not going to live there, and he couldn't live there because he's Jewish. Yeah. I'm not going to choose to live there because I don't believe in that crap. But if you want to do it, great. If you want to have a communist commune over in the middle of the woods, run around naked and do what all God's country wants you to do, and you collectively share everything, great, do that, have fun. And you're going to need each other to trade. But what you decide to do in your community is what you decide to do in your community. And the libertarian principles are based on self-ownership and control of yourself. Hayek talked about, and F.A. Hayek is a famous economist, talked about that freedom is not about lack of structure. I enjoy structure. I have structure. I use structure in my own family. It's essential to have structure for a society. It is about removing force from that. If you don't want to live where the neo-Nazis are, or where the communists are, move.
Don't live there. Yeah.
Right. Move. Get the hell out. Go somewhere else where they have a better sense. That's why I resonate with the Hoteps an awful lot. They're about building community. And if they want to build a black community someplace, I'm in support of that. I want that to happen because
Yeah.
I want them to succeed, because I want each individual to succeed. That's what it means. Many people get so scared of this anarchy title, and then they shut themselves off, and the government has been waging this war on freedom for so long, and using the word anarchist as to mean something that it doesn't mean so much that people buy it. So I needed to step in and say, one, you're right. The Libertarian Party is awful at marketing. They're just not good at it. And that I was a delegate.
Honestly, I think they're slightly better at it than conservatives, because they can still get people to join their damn movement, and they don't have all the structure that the Republican Party has. Like, if they had the equal amount of structure that the Republican Party has, I think they could beat the Republican Party. So just for our position on our failure on to market our ideas and stick to principle, I see libertarians being pretty damn down the line consistent.
That depends on the person you're talking to. I'm consistent, at least I try to be. There are people like Adam that tries to be consistent. Dan's consistent. Hell, Vermin Supreme is relatively, consistent. Yeah. But the problem is that isn't what the experience I've had. They are so butthurt when somebody is just a little bit off their reservation, what they think is acceptable. For instance, I don't believe in borders. I don't think that you can draw a line on a map and that work. The only real border I believe in is private property borders. If I draw a line around my property called a fence, then that's real. But if government comes about and just says, okay, you can't go over across here, that's dumb. That's not going to work. But that's a typical libertarian position, is they don't tend to believe in government borders. But at the same time, if somebody, for instance, Maj Toure, who's a friend of mine, if Maj came out and said he believed in borders, now he's been clear about that this is just where we're at right now. He came on Aquarian Anarchy and talked to us about his particular belief when it comes to borders. But if somebody believes in borders and they want to become a libertarian, let them come in. All you got to do to convince somebody to move in a libertarian or an anarchist direction, it's just start being consistent. Start talking about ethics, because you get it when you get there. You start.
You have changed my mind. You have changed my mind, because I found that I remember I used to follow. I still do Reason magazine. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact that consistently they are down the line. And what I followed them for is the fact that they call everybody out consistently. Mm-hmm. What I ended up having an issue with was, after a while following them, I realized that they weren't so consistent. Mm-hmm. But then I got on, and I applied battle strategy to politics. I went, well, why don't you guys just run an insurgency campaign within the Republican Party or within both parties? I was like, they
tried with Ron Paul. They tried with Ron Paul. And to back up real quick, since we did bring up Ron Paul, you were talking about taxation earlier, and Ron Paul said that he would sign the fair tax, which is the bill for like a federal tax. It's a very long story, and I've studied the fair tax to a pretty great extent myself. And as theft policies go, it is the best theft policy out there, but still theft. But at the end of the day, they did try that. They ran Ron Paul, and to be clear, Ron Paul's what made me a libertarian. I was a conservative, and what's funny is I have made quite a transformation in my life. When I was 18, I considered myself a communist, and started looking into anarcho-communism at the time. Found a bunch of different writings and talkings. And to be honest, it was the band Queensryche, if people know who that is, that kind of started me down that path. But then 9/11 happened, scared the crap out of me, and suddenly I became a conservative because I was like, oh crap, I don't want to die, and I don't want people to take my money. So I'm going to be a conservative now, and became a pretty hardcore neocon for a long time. And then actually in 2012, with the help of my beautiful wife, I started listening to Ron Paul largely about his views on the Fed, because economics has always been something that interested me, and he was just absolutely right about how the Fed manipulates the economy and so forth. And then I started listening, and as I listened, and as I started paying attention, I started applying those principles that I was learning consistently across the board, and found that, it's not right to steal from people, even if you call yourself an IRS agent. It's not right to kill people, even if you call yourself a military, you call yourself a soldier. It's not right to, those things are wrong, no matter if it's an individual doing it or it's government doing it. So the thing is about reason is that I agree with you. I know Matt Welsh pretty well, and had the opportunity to talk to him at length in 2018 at the Libertarian National Convention, because I was a delegate. They're trying to get Adam elected, and he's a good guy. I like Matt, but again, you're right. They make exceptions. Freedom doesn't have exceptions. It just doesn't.
No. Yeah, I tend to be libertarian on many things. The things I'm not libertarian on are due to the pragmatic nature of the fact that the world we live in is not libertarian and doesn't treat each other by libertarian principles. And that's not just, it's not of our own making, but we certainly did not help it.
For sure.
So
you're right. The world is not libertarian. You're right.
Yeah,
the world is not libertarian. And the thing is, though, people need to understand 3% of the population in 1775 through the 1780s it's 3% of the United States population rebelled against the largest empire the world has ever known at the time, and won. 3%. And really, yes, voting libertarians, when you put up somebody like Joe from this past election cycle that no one got excited about, when you put somebody like that up, no, you're not going to get 3% of the population. But if you put somebody like Adam, or you put somebody like Dan Berman, or even Vermin Supreme, and for those that go, oh, he's just making fun of stuff. Yes, he is making fun of stuff. That's something I can get behind. The government should be made fun of. But if you had put somebody like those people, or Dave Smith, or Spike Cohen, or any of those people that are real libertarians, consistent libertarians, you're going to get 10% of the population, and you're going to start making a difference. So you're right. It is a minority.
I think where they screwed up with is Joe has a fantastic resume. Spectacular resume. I mean, if you're comparing resumes, I don't think I've ever seen a presidential candidate stand up with a resume like that. The problem is she's damn uninteresting to watch, to listen to. There's nothing that draws you to her. And if you're looking for an outsider candidate, I say it, and I've said it repeatedly since JFK. Damn near every president we had something magic about them. They were involved in the culture in one way or another. The only libertarian that I know of who is actually engaged in culture is Vince Vaughn.
Yeah,
like he's the only famous libertarian. I like him. He seems like a great guy. I'd like to hear with him, but he seems like he's one of the only famous people that I can think of that is a libertarian. Other than
And so-
that, if you're looking for people involved in the political space, it would have to. Spike Cohen would have had to be the top of the ticket. It would have had to been somebody like
I'd have voted for
Larry
it.
Sharp, or it would have to be someone like Larry Sharp or Maj Touré, or somebody that is interesting, somebody that can make an argument and explain things in a way that,
Right.
frankly, you don't want to buy a pillow and a blanket and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because unfortunately, intellectual arguments for a populace that is increasingly non-intellectual is not going to help you when we live in the age of reality TV. And there does have to be some sort of magic when you're standing behind that podium to convince people. If people really wanted to change, you gotta choose different. I say the same thing for conservatives. We choose the candidate that the intellectual friggin' showmen love.
Mm-hmm.
That we choose the politically correct, acceptable one that they're all going to get behind, but that the average everyday voter can't relate to because, well, the guy's been an altar boy for 35 years and went to Africa and joined the Peace Corps, and like this story just seems so incredibly, and somehow cured cancer in his off time from curing world hunger, and it just seems so out there and unrealistic. The average person cannot relate to these people. I will vote for a plumber over the majority of Washington.
For sure. And I want to be clear. We will never achieve, never, I will use the word never achieve freedom through the ballot box. That is never going to happen. Now, does that mean that I don't believe at all in voting? No, that doesn't believe that. It means I need something to vote for. If I don't vote against crap, and that's what you're talking about. The conservatives, and for that matter, the Democrats, don't put people up. If the Democrats were voting for somebody that people could vote for, we'd be talking about President Bernie Sanders right now. As scary as that might be, but people voted for Bernie Sanders. No one voted for Joe Biden. Not a single person voted for him. People voted against Donald Trump. Now, I will say, people voted for Donald Trump. I have to say, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Out of those two idiots, absolutely. Donald Trump all the way. Out of those two.
It is
we're never going to get there via...
I will say there's a substantially higher amount of people voted for Trump than voted for Biden.
For sure.
But it was substantially less than the total amount that voted for Trump.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people that showed up to vote and they were just like, the left went off the deep end. I just can't, I can't possibly get behind this. And honestly, I think the Republican Party has been like, every time we lose an election, I think it's because of that. It's because we put our worst argument at the front. And I think Maj Touré honestly had the best comment of the year for me. If I were to do an award show like the Grifties, that would have been it. It would have been, and I repeatedly share it and quote it to people. Both sides of the aisle airing their grievances at the state, and they convinced us to take each other out so that they don't have to answer to our grievances. And I was like, that's it. That is it right there. They know we're all airing our grievances at them, but they convinced us to take each other out and fight each other over whose grievances are actual grievances. To which I say, all of our grievances are actual grievances. And we should be taking them out on the people in charge who have repeatedly gotten elected and not done what they're supposed to do.
For sure. And the thing is, that's all on purpose. The government uses that tool like a hammer. They use it all the time. Divide and conquer is their primary thing. They use it all the time. One of the things we've talked about on Aquarian Anarchy multiple times is, can you imagine if after George Floyd happened, if the Boog Boys or the Proud Boys or somebody like that would have come out and stood arm in arm and got it on camera. And I realize that we live in a society that everything that it goes over radio, television, or a newspaper, magazine is all propaganda. But if they had stood arm in arm with those people who had real grievances, who had real problems, people were being killed in the streets by the police. And whether you're talking about Breonna Taylor, or you're talking about George Floyd, or any number of any other people that have been murdered by the state in the past few years, and much less in war. If they had stood with them and said, you know what, our problem's the state, it's right across the way there, and they had stood against them, we would have seen a real revolution in this country. You wouldn't have seen what just happened in Washington, D.C. That was nothing more than an excuse to bring the boot on the American people. And it's coming. Yeah. We haven't seen the full weight of that boot yet. And I said this going into this. You can go back and you can check it out. Now, don't get me wrong. Make America rebel again. For sure. I'm about that. That's all good. But you rebel in the right way. And how you rebel is not by making an ass of yourself on television. How you rebel is by offering real solutions to the American people that don't require force, that don't require violence, that don't require people to hurt one another. We need to get back in this country, and frankly across the world, to the concepts taught by Jesus, Buddha, Muhammad, you name the spiritual teacher. We need to get back to love, compassion, and understanding. I'm not a liberal, and I find myself at odds with many liberals, or for that matter, some conservatives. But at the same time, I realize that liberal that is arguing for Black Lives Matter, as an example, generally, there are controlled opposition everywhere, but those liberals genuinely want a better life for their kids, for their family, and they believe that the way that they get there is with government. They're wrong. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. They're wrong. But in their heart of hearts, they're doing what they feel is right. And we cannot let these government tools and the media continue to divide us into these gulags and continually fight each other. A couple of years ago, I did an article for Adam about propaganda called, I think it was like Seeing Through the Lies or something like that. It was an article that I wrote for Adam. And in it, I said that this whole thing reminds me of The Bug's Life or Ants, either one, where, you have these grasshoppers that come down and they're big and they're mean and they force people to pay their taxes, give them food. And it took a whole bunch of ants to overthrow that. And the government realizes that that's the position that it's in. It is a bunch of mean-looking grasshoppers, and we are a bunch of ants. But you start putting us together, and we become one hell of a force. And that's why...
That's my main argument against people that say that you could never successfully rebel against the government, that the Second Amendment is useless because they got drones and stuff. And I'm like, first off, there are human beings that operate those drones and operate those tanks and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the majority, speaking as a military man, the majority of enlisted men, when they poll the military, and they've done this multiple times to gauge where they're at, and it's not by mistake either. They ask, and many officers are willing to follow the order.
Not the enlisted men.
No, the enlisted men are like, hell no, because we're statesmen. We're statesmen. Last time I looked, Texas made up 60% of the armed forces. Texans are Texans first. They're American second.
Yep. And that's true no matter where you're at.
America, then God, then beer, then football, and then guns. I'm like, and it's in that order. And every time it gets asked, I'm like, they couldn't do it. They couldn't successfully do it, and they know they couldn't do it.
Nope.
That's why they haven't done it. If they thought they could physically take guns away, they thought they could physically go door to door and do what they needed to, they would have done it already. But the fact is that they can't, because we're not like any other country that they have tried this in. This is a country of warriors. We are built and we thrive on war. You have too many consecutive generations of warriors. You have one warrior raising another warrior consecutively through and through, to the point, and we just had the largest gun buy over the past, what is it, 10 ever since the beginning of Obama, we have hit a new record every single year for gun sales. Every single year. And now during the pandemic, everyone's like, oh damn, they're going to come and steal my toilet paper, I better buy a tank. Right. And now we're at, like, they're going to ban guns and I'm going to have to fight for my toilet paper with a fork. We need to buy more guns.
Right. Let's be clear. The best proof that the government could be easily gotten past, okay, because I don't advocate for violence at all. I'm a peaceful person. I believe that we can get there through peaceful methods. But the best example of how that is absolutely possible is Afghanistan. We've been in Afghanistan for 20 years against a bunch of people, sticks, rocks, maybe an AK-47 and a goat, and we can't do nothing to them. We got a whole country packed full of weaponry. and
with better tactics and equally treacherous terrain. Like, I keep saying, if the world's greatest empires throughout history said that we could not be conquered by an outside force, what the hell makes you think that we would be conquered domestically by our own government? A rifle behind every blade of grass, that still stands.
For sure.
The average person owns 3 or 4, like 2 or 3 guns last time I checked. It was like we doubled or tripled the United States population by now.
Yep.
I have enough guns to lend to my neighbor if I need him to watch my back.
Right.
So I'm saying, if you really wanted to come and take them, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to be successful. I mean, I would really like us to be able to solve our issues peacefully. Sure. So I'm a big fan of doing it at the ballot box. And I think no matter what your goal is, I think everyone needs to focus on their messaging, because we fail at the freedom movement as a whole when it comes to messaging. Which is insane that you cannot package and sell freedom. It is, we fight for it, we die for it, we will suffer for it, we will kill for it, and yet we can't sell it to people. Which tells me
because people have to
they're not trying.
Right. And that's because people have to come to it. De Tocqueville said that it was that freedom is one of the most, I don't remember the exact quote, but he said it's one of the most precious things, but it's also one of the most difficult things to learn. And at the end of the day, the governments, particularly the federal government, knows that it's screwed. It knows it. Yeah. And here's a little piece of trivia for you. When in history did the United States formally and unconditionally surrender?
Formally and unconditionally surrender. I know I'm going to get in trouble. I know one of my military buddies is going to rip me apart. No, I mean, we learn military history front and back.
Right, but you don't learn this. In the late 1800s, the Sioux Nation rose up again, and they at that time controlled 1/5 of the population.
Yes.
And Red Cloud absolutely whooped the crap out of the American government, and he had largely spears, bows and arrows, and mallets. That's what he had to fight with. majorly, and they defeated the United States in an all-out and an outright war. It was a 2-year war. They defeated them. I did an article on Red Cloud as well, and they defeated the United States government. And the United States government didn't only have to surrender, but they had to give up all of their land. Now, as we know, that didn't last because they eventually defeated Sitting Bull, who did not manage to get, like, for instance, the Cheyenne to fight with him to the extent that that Red Cloud did, and Red Cloud by that time was too old, and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, what Red Cloud proved is that a militia defense, a defense that is not a standing army, a militia defense, which is what they're using, what Al Qaeda is using in the Middle East. It's a militia defense, is more effective than a standing army.
It's how we beat the British.
Yeah, it is how we beat the British.
It's how the Afghans managed to beat the Russians, the British, the French, the Persians, the Russians again, and the British again. I'm like, they haven't been beat by anyone else, and we've been there for
20 years.
Almost 2 decades. Yeah, damn near 2 decades to the day now.
Right.
And now, and yet, amazing as it is, I was hoping, I thought that the anti-war, with Trump pulling out troops, and with the anti-war left, I thought we were going to completely pull out. I thought they were going to take that chance to be like, boom, see, we get the credit, not you. And it didn't happen. It looks like we're actually going to be going back in. And I'm sitting here going, when are we going to learn? When are we going to learn? Because I really don't want to, like, don't get me wrong. I will go over there as a private contractor and make my $185K a year.
Because that's what it's about. It's about money.
That's basically what it is. And, if we're going to get to the point where it's going to be about money, let's all just be honest and say it's about money. And then let's go over and, make some life-changing decisions. Let's hit the jackpot.
Well, let's be clear. Again, we'll go with Thomas Paine. Thomas Paine said that wars are not, or taxes are not raised to fight wars. Wars are fought to raise taxes. They expand that monopoly of force and violence as much as they
had such an eloquent way of speaking, such a poetic. You could not read Thomas Paine and not be like, it stirs the soul. It gets you to the point where you're like, yes, grab my musket. We're going to go.
Right. Yeah. And they said
my 9-year-old, he's so throughout this whole pandemic and the homeschooling and all that shit, my 9-year-old is basically, he's progressing faster than they can provide him an education. So I'm like, all right, well, here you go. Let's start you on your American history and your American education. Here's the Constitution, and here's the Federalist Papers and the Declaration of Independence. Write me a paper on Thomas Jefferson. Write me he does little PowerPoints because it's all about technology. So I'm like, write me a PowerPoint on Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, and Abraham Lincoln, and let's just go down the line and start to explore it. And he's like, and the more knowledge I can put in front of him, the faster he goes through it. So I'm like, and now we're about to do Thomas Paine, and I know I have one of my favorite books so far by not one of my necessarily favorite authors, but Common Sense by Thomas Paine, written and narrated by Glenn Beck.
I've read it.
He's got a good voice. I like the audiobook. So I got that, and I'm like, all right, we're going to listen to it together, and I'm going to have him take some notes, and we're going to discuss this, because if that does not make you want to fight for freedom right there, I don't know what will.
Right, and that's a fact, and that's how we want. When I say we, it's not like I was there. That's how the revolution was successful. It was John Adams, I believe, that said that that without Thomas Paine's pen, George Washington's sword would have been ineffective. And that's absolutely the truth. And the thing is, we have those kinds of power now. We have that. We can do that again. Let's start teaching freedom again. What you're doing with your son, you said, is amazing. That's good stuff. May I suggest you also include Patrick Henry in that?
Yes.
Patrick Henry's amazing. And among the Federalist Papers, which are interesting, I prefer the Anti-Federalist Papers, especially in the Anti-Federalist Papers. There is usually included in the collections is Patrick Henry's address to the Virginia legislature against ratification of the Constitution. And I suggested.
Let me add that to my Audible.
Yeah, and there I know that it's on YouTube. Yeah, I know that it's on YouTube. It's Patrick Henry, his address to the Virginia legislature. That dude had a crystal ball. He knew what was coming. He said, what's going to happen is you're going to have an increase of powers, particularly to the executive branch. You're going to have, because he noticed that, the population of the United States, even then, was far greater than the population of Britain. And they had less representation percentage-wise at the time than the British had in Parliament. And they had all kinds of trouble in the British Parliament. So he knew it was coming. He saw it. If Patrick Henry had been alive today, he'd be sitting with us in this room having a podcast, because that dude is exactly what we're talking about, as would many of these people. Many of what we consider the founding fathers would be looking at us going, all right, guys, when are you going to get out? Because my little girl is learning about the Revolutionary War right now in school, and one of the things that I pointed out to her, because I'm an asshole dad, is that she's learning, that they were against the Stamp Act, and they were against all of these different taxation without representation. And every time I said, you do know that's taxed now. That's taxed now. That's taxed now. There is nothing that they rebelled against that is not taxed today. So
me and my son, we watch The Patriot every year. So we watch The Patriot every year. I mean, it's a great movie.
Sure.
Obviously, it's romanced quite a bit, but it gets the point across until they remake 1776, and I can get a little bit more in depth with them, or somebody makes a series, because right now the cinematic universe is a great way as a learning tool to keep young kids interested. So as we're going through it, same thing. He goes, why did we fight? I'm like, because we got pissed off that we were being taxed. And he's like, oh, you complain about taxes all the time. I go, yeah, I don't like taxes. And he's like, well, why aren't we fighting a war now? And I'm like, you know what? We'll have this conversation when you get a little bit older, and you can understand, because it's going to involve it involves going a lot deeper.
Yeah. And the real answer to that question is also brought up by Locke. This is one of my favorite things that Locke said. He said that nothing moves a nation, and I'm going to probably mess up the quote a little bit, but it's going to be very close. Nothing moves a nation into seditious commotion but oppression. And if you don't feel oppressed, then you're not going to act against your government, which is what sedition is. And they're going to keep pushing. I look. This is going to be an interesting time when the high heel of doom takes over. Because if anybody believes that old man that's busy sniffing kids is going to make it for 4 years, they have another thing coming. And I'll tell you what, I'm not going to be John McAfee talking about eating my junk if if he makes it. I'm not going to make that prediction, but I will say that it will shock me if he makes it 4 years, and whoever the Republicans put up better be ready to fight Kamala Harris, the first Indian, Hispanic, Native American, Black president that we've ever had.
To be honest, I hope Biden makes it for 4 years, because if he makes it for 4 years, it'll be easy to run a campaign against their administration.
For sure.
If he doesn't make it for 4 years,
it's gonna be
you're
hard.
going to have two years of an incumbent, Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris is twice the radical that Joe Biden wishes he was in his first wet dreams.
And she's going to be dangerous, because I'm not kidding when I say that high heel of doom is going to come down.
Yeah, I mean, she is very much that pit bull prosecutor, and as much as conservatives like to make as much as conservatives like to make fun of her, she is an actual believer in a lot of the stuff that she does. Mm-hmm. Joe Biden is an opportunist and will just do what he has to glom on to the power he needs. And that's fine. I see him and Mitch McConnell and the rest of them all in the same vein. But going in, I think Andrew Wilkow on Patriot XM had the best take on what will happen. Joe Biden will pass all the unpopular legislation, all the revolutionary shit, and right around that 2-year mark, if he doesn't die, they'll give him the option to walk out nice and peacefully, or be 25th out, because that argument can already be made. Yeah. And Kamala Harris will get the last 2 years of a Biden presidency plus 2 chances to run for her own. Yep. And I don't want that to happen. That is a dangerous, because while Republicans are either all in their feelings right now and like, that's it, I'm never going to vote again, because not showing up to the polls is apparently a way to show your politicians you're unhappy with them. Mm-hmm. I mean, it doesn't actually work, because all it does is really empower lobbyists to take your place. The only real check against the lobbyists is twice the voting power.
But at the same time,
is twice the voting power to overwhelm the dollar of a lobbyist. You have to 2-to-1 their own dollars. However, at the same time, you also have the more radical conservatives that are either like me, I'm like, hey, let's reform the system. There's a strategy we can use. We can move forward, and we can change how this all works and get it back towards what it was and what it was designed to be. And we can fill in the gaps from where we saw they manipulated the system to get us to where we are now. And this time, let's not neglect our communities. Let's not run away at every turn. Let's not go and sit down on the couch and kick up our feet and drink a beer and say, that's it. All right, fought for freedom. Everything's good. And now I'm going to sit back and be apathetic for the next 2 decades. And we're going to be right back here again. So, and then there's the Marjorie Taylor Greene Q Anonymous. I got nothing for those people. I mean, it's bad, and we can all just agree that the people that we don't like are bad people. They don't also have to be pedophile conspiracies trying to take over the world. They're not all Satan worshiping pedophiles. Right. I think that's a completely asinine argument to make from the get-go.
It makes us all look bad.
It does. I say this to my Christian friends all the time. I'm a Christian. I'm a devout Christian. And if I'm going to go just off the religion for a moment, the devil uses people. The devil uses people, which by definition means not everybody that sins is a devil worshiper. If the devil is using you, you're not a devil worshiper. If you're just a tool, a worshiper, yeah. If you were a worshiper, he wouldn't have to use you. You'd be voluntarily just going,
yeah.
And we don't have to take it to the extreme. We can be reasonable and not give in to our worst nature.
So I want to dig into that for a minute. I didn't vote, and the reason I didn't vote is because, again, I only vote for things that I can vote for. And again, I don't believe that that we get to freedom in the ballot box. I don't believe that. When all of this whole thing went down and people started freaking out, a lot of my friends that have been libertarian leaning or maybe they're hoteps or whoever they are, were like, this anarchy thing's starting to make a little bit of sense to me. And my response to them, and I did it as a joke, but I mean it to a degree as well. My response was, okay, grab you some Bitcoin, get you some weed in the back, and grab you some seeds for your garden and some firearms so that you can protect yourself and your freedom. Those are the things that are going to deliver us to freedom, not voting. And what we need to do is make those people in Washington irrelevant. Stop caring what the hell they talk about and what the hell they do, and stop obeying. And now you're gonna, people are gonna say,
as long as people are willing to follow it. At the point where, and that has happened multiple times throughout history. And for anyone that actually questions that, and then you can continue. For anyone that actually questions that, ride down the highway.
Yeah.
Ride down the highway. Speed limit's 55, 65, and everyone's doing 85. Guess what? The reason that they don't just shut down the highway and ticket every person on the highway is because they can't. Right. They can't fucking do it. It's not possible.
Right. But at the same time, the electoral politics is important to watch, because these are the people that do control the big guns. They do control tanks and jets and helicopters and big ass boats. They do control those things. They have their finger on nuclear weapons. That's real. And so what we have to do is, I'm not encouraging people to go join the Libertarian Party. I'm not doing it because in my opinion, the Libertarian Party, there's a guy named Edward Conkin III who said that he's the one who founded agorism. He said that the Libertarian Party, and this is a paraphrase, is where basically people go. It's controlled opposition. People who are interested in liberty go to get nothing done. So, it's, and that's on purpose, because they know, again, that one, they're not good at it. Number two, if they were good at it, just because you vote, do you think the people that are murdering people all over the world and stealing from your grandma to pay for their luxurious lifestyle are going to give a shit that you voted? The answer is no. Number two, when people say, well, but if everybody just stayed home, this is on the other side of that. If people just stayed home and only say 3% of the people voted, and then let's say it was 7% of the people voted, then the government would be like, oh, we don't have a mandate. That's bullcrap. It was less than 10% of the population that voted in the first election in this country. They don't give a damn what people say. And if they don't need proof that they don't care what the people said, I'm sorry. I do not believe that Donald Trump lost Georgia. I don't care. I'm not a Trump supporter. I don't like Donald Trump. He did a bunch of stuff that I can kind of get behind. He was less worry than a lot of the other psychopaths. But they don't care. They're going to do what they're going to do. The government makes its own rules, and those rules are for you. They're not for them. And these mask mandates and stuff like that should prove that to you, because how many of these assholes are going to get caught out with their families at the diner while you have to stay home before you realize that this is nothing more than putting you in a cage? This is slavery. Now, this is
the year. This is the year for me of I wish a motherfucker would.
Yeah.
That is where I'm at right now. If you think you're going to pull me out of my car for not driving my own car alone wearing a mask, I pray for you.
Right. And make
sure
you're
coming into my house to tell me that my kids need to wear a mask. Yeah. Like I pray for you. I bought one of those dash cam things so I can stick my phone in it, because there is occasionally a time where I have to do a live stream because the government did something so damn dumb that it can't wait, and I need to do it while my mind is still rational before my blood boils and I start like throwing fireballs at people.
I feel you.
And that's where I'm at, is I'm like, all right, well, I have two options, and I still maintain my position on voting, and I respect your position and I understand it. My whole thing is, if all freedom comes with responsibility, we failed to maintain our responsibility and uphold it at the local level.
Sure.
We failed to maintain it within our communities, so our local governments got involved. It failed to be taken care of due to our own apathy at the local level, so we cried to our states. Our states failed to protect their own rights and their own power, so they cried to the federal government for power, which all travels from my wallet up all the rungs of government till it gets to the federal government, and then all the rungs right back down so that we can get 10 cents on the dollar of what they originally took out of my pocket in the first fucking place.
Right.
My disdain for that entire process has got me to the point where I'm like, you know what? If you're actually out there trying to make a difference in your local community, I have respect for you. If you're here having these conversations like we are right now, trying to wake people the hell up, I have respect for you. If all you do is shit post online, and I mean the people who just like accept the meme lords because they're keeping my sanity. The people that literally are just crip walking or throwing up gang signs and shit, the political thuggery, the my team's better than your team.
Right.
Those people, if you don't vote and you sit there and talk all this nonsense, I have zero respect for you whatsoever.
Right.
If you get so butthurt because you didn't get what you wanted, and one man didn't get elected, one man, we still grew our party in every other facet of government. We grew it at the local level in damn near every state. There is no reason why you shouldn't be leveraging that local and state level to continue this freedom movement. If you want to be successful, you cannot just have half the fight that the left does. You need to have twice the fight that they have. Yeah. You need to go above and beyond. You need to do silent vigils outside people's doorways. I'm not saying be the crazies that get up in their face and tip over their car. Don't do what they do, but do what we do. In the 60s, Dr. MLK was successful because they came in their Sunday's best and they marched arm in arm, non-violently, and sometimes you have to be willing to take the beating. Sometimes getting punched in the face while you're wearing a suit and doing nothing wrong and you're remaining principled is exactly what is required to get the job done.
For sure.
And then there is eventually that time when well-targeted violence is required. But we're not there yet. And you'll know when you're there because violence will be brought against you.
For sure.
And
the thing is, we can avoid that by doing what you're talking about. We can avoid that by getting involved in your local community. You know, yes, there are going to be these complete, you know, tools that will do stupid crap. That's going to happen in your local community. But make yourself a martyr. If somebody kills me in my town, if a police officer comes and hurts me in my town, it's going to be known that guy never hurt anybody. He was always really nice to me. I am the smiling, happy face of freedom. And that's what we need to be. We need to live our ethics. We need to live our way of being. We need to be peaceful, compassionate, and loving. And when we are peaceful, compassionate, and loving, yes, somebody, you know, one of the analogies I like to use is that image of that hippie putting the flower in the barrel of the gun. What people don't know is she got shot. She was killed. And that happens while you do that. Can you imagine? I'm just a podcaster. I've got some friends, but if they shoot me in cold blood in my front yard, oh my God, I've got, the Kokesh campaign are going to come unglued. I'm telling you right now. Yeah. And Adam Kokesh is not somebody you want to piss off. That dude will do some stuff. And I'm not meaning violence because he's a very peaceful person, but he is an activist. You kill me in my front yard, that dude's out there. Hotep Jesus, that dude's going to have something to say about them killing me in cold blood. Bosh Torre is going to say some stuff. You know,
I'm willing to take if that's what it takes for us to get freedom, I will take the bullet right now. I mean, give me a glass of bourbon first, though. Like,
right. Smoke some weed.
Really nice bourbon. If you're gonna put me to death, give me bourbon and a cigar, and we can do this any day. Right. But I mean, if that's what it takes to really solidify this, so that people see, that people really, really open up and see. If it takes being a martyr, I have no problem being a martyr.
To be clear, don't want that to happen.
Don't want it to happen. To be completely honest, flight is not in my nature.
Right.
My automatic response is fight. So, honestly, if you tried to make me a martyr, it might not go so well because my automatic reaction is a pew pew reaction. So, but at the same time, I mean, it's just a reflex.
Right. I'll tell you, I understand, man. When I was in high school, because I'm an old man now, and so I'm not trying to get all jiggy now or nothing. But when I was in high school, dude, I had my time. And if somebody, some guy, I wasn't some badass or whatever, but if some guy said, "Hey, man, I'm going to take you out," I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, you might do that. I got news for you. That you might put me in the hospital bed. I got news for you. You're gonna be next to me because I ain't going like a little pussy. You're gonna get beat up too. So you come at me in my house. Yes, I'm going to put up a resistance in self-defense. But I don't think that they're going to resort to that. I think that they are more likely, if they're going to try to take me down, they're going to try to go after my character. They're going to try to silence me. They're going to do things like that in reality. But at the end of the day, yes, I am willing to die for what I believe in. I don't want to. I have a 10-year-old daughter who I adore. I actually have 4 kids, and I'm just going with the youngest one. I have a 10-year-old daughter that I want her to grow up with her father. I have a wife who adores me, and she wants me to stick around. So I don't want that to happen. And I don't think that it will happen. And the reason I don't think that it will happen is because these people are stupid, but they're not that stupid. They're not stupid enough to go too far. Now, I think they've walked it down to where they have gone just far enough to where they've taken too many liberties for people. And what I have to say what I have to say to those people is welcome aboard, come on in, learn some stuff. Here's a copy of Adam Kokesh's book, Freedom. That'll help you out. Or maybe Murray Rothbard's book, Anatomy of the State. Check that out. Or maybe Spooner, whatever your personal interests are. Here, read this. Learn something. If you're not into reading, how about we talk? How about we figure things out? How about we figure out how we can be? When it comes to religion, the thing is, I'm not a Christian. I don't believe in the Christian doctrine and what have you. But I do believe in the ideas that were taught by Jesus. And those ideas were to love thy neighbor as thyself. And I do. Yeah. I love my neighbor. I love the people around me. And, I may not be a Christian, but I damn sure live by those Christian values that teach love, community, and freedom. It's all there. And, here in a moment, I'm going to need to get going. I want to thank you for having me on the podcast, because this has been a really good conversation for me. And I hope you've enjoyed it as well. But, yeah. And it's these kinds of conversations, and it's these kinds of reaching out. You're gonna be a Republican. There's nothing wrong with that. I wouldn't advise you to be a libertarian. Make whatever difference you can. Do what you can to enlarge people's understandings, because I believe the reason that we call our show, because the name of the platform is Aquarian Anarchy, but the name of the primary show is The Evolution of the Revolution. And I really believe that we are evolving towards freedom, and we are going to get there. And real freedom, when people say freedom, freedom is what you have when people are not forcing their will upon you, which means that's what you have in an anarchist setting.
Yeah. I think all things being said, in absolute perfect expression of freedom, the loving anarchy that you say is the best representation of that. Second to that, I would say, would be libertarianism, if it were actually practiced and put into practice.
For sure.
Because the majority of the world does not practice that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd say like 99.99999%.
Mm-hmm.
The most, I'd say, if we could get back to where this country was founded. I mean, in essence, because obviously there were flaws. Like, I don't want to overturn the 14th, 15th, and 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. And, crazy. I'd
change them.
Crazy shit. Yeah, I'd change them a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, for all intents and purposes, as long as there is government, there's the need of government to protect us against the actions of other governments. I think we need militia? To get to. Yeah. Yeah. Like, I'm a big fan of the militia. And my best explanation of a militia, because people keep confusing the National Guard as a militia, which it is not, because the National Guard still receives its orders and paychecks from the federal government.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want to question that, put a tug of war between the state government and the federal government, and see who ultimately wins that. See who cashes their checks.
For sure.
Because that's who wins. Mm-hmm. The chain of command is federal. I don't care what any National Guard member. I don't care if you're the general and head of your state's National Guard. You still fall under the federal chain of command. You still ultimately report to the President of the United States. He can deploy you if he wants to a completely different country. If you were just a state's militia, you would not be able to be deployed to another country outside of an actual declaration of war, which we have not been in quite a long time.
It's World War II.
So, yeah, and I say that repeatedly. If we actually used a militia, it would be, I grab my guns, you grab your guns, and we retain the rank and experience that we had in the military.
Yeah,
because that's how it worked. It wasn't a formal structure. It was, we all grab our guns, we show up at the meeting house. I had a military rank, you had a military rank. Everyone who didn't have a military rank is a private, and we all retain our military ranks or receive promotions as needed.
Yeah,
and it's that simple.
Yeah, when I think that we can find common ground is, and I've said this before, and I will likely say it again. You know, I'm an anarchist, and I believe that all government is flawed and all government is wrong, and all government is bad. But if you can meet me at the Constitution, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Good luck getting back there. Good luck.
Yeah.
Good luck getting back there. Once you let that genie out of the bottle, it's kind of hard to put her back in. But if we can get back to the Constitution at this point with the crap we're putting up with, I'm on board. Hook me up with the Constitution. I'm good with it.
If we can't get all the way back to the Constitution, I mean back to how it would, like its original text and shit, then let's, you know what? I think the second best would be the Liberty Amendments, the Convention of States. I saw the amendments that were proposed, and I'm like, then I sat down, and after reading it, I actually went through and I sat down and I tried to game out every possible way to scapegoat the system that I could think of, and I was like, I actually think this could work. I actually think this could work. Like, my example of why it would be so successful is every state legislation had actually come to a floor vote in, and they actually allow explanation of it. It seems to pass.
Well, the thing is, you know, any of these ideas like that, or the secessionist ideas, or Adams, dissolving the federal government and returning power to the states, whatever mechanism, it cannot be worse than what we're doing. It can't. We're moving closer and closer to Karl Marx's vision of a completely communist country. We are moving to that. And if you think Donald Trump did something against that, go look at what he did, not what he said, what he did. And many of the things that he did were socialist in nature. So you can make whatever arguments you want. And again, out of
he is not a pure conservative. His social stances on things, the fact that he doesn't want to lock up gays and stuff, I understand that may give people comfort, but a lot of the stuff that he did empowered government in an area that it was not already empowered, and that did not help us. And many of the people on the right that we so revere, like Reagan, did the same thing. Yes, we like some of the results. No, he deregulated a lot. And I'll give Donald Trump credit for the deregulations that he did pass. The difference is Reagan and Donald Trump both dealt with, I'll say JFK, Reagan, and Donald Trump both dealt with the same dynamics. The entirety of the government was against them because their ideas were completely revolutionary. They were trying they tried to buck the entire system, and the entire system fought back against them. JFK actually died. Ronald Reagan got shot more than once, actually got shot once. And then Well, the Secret Service hasn't actually given out numbers as to how many times they stopped a plot against Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But again, it is people that buck the system. And while I see flaws with each individual, and I have no problem calling balls and strikes down the line, there's a lot of stuff that Trump did that it was the method in which he did it grew the government. Like,
For sure.
executive orders. I'm not a fan of executive orders. Yeah. If I were going to be POTUS tomorrow and I were going to sign an executive order, it would be remanding all federal regulations not codified in law back to their respective state governments. All responsibilities of all federal agencies back to their respective state counterparts, and all federal agencies except law enforcement specifically would be now relegated to statistic taking organizations.
See, for me, one executive order, dissolve the federal government, get rid of it. We don't need it anymore, and the state governments can do it. The states governments can handle it.
That cannot be done through an executive order. That's huh?
Why?
Outside the purview of
what if you ran on it? What if that's what you were elected to do?
If I was elected to do it, still would be unconstitutional because it would require amending the Constitution.
Since when did the government care about the Constitution?
I agree, but on principle,
yeah, right. I get that. I don't. I'm an anarchist. So, so at the end of the day, I don't care. And because what Adam was running on when he was running for president, and I really do need to get going, but when he ran for president, he ran to dissolve the federal government through an executive order that would dissolve the federal government, and he made that clear as he ran for president. So if he had gotten elected, and we both know he wouldn't have gotten elected, but had he gotten elected, that is exactly what he would have done, because then no asshole in a suit or asshole in a judge's robe would be able to thwart the will of the American people.
You know what? I'm going to have him on, because that is...
I know a guy.
Yeah, I'm going to have him on, along with many of the other people that you mentioned. Not necessarily because I universally agree, but because I like the way that they think, and I think it would help the liberty movement. If we're all to move forward, we need to pull the best ideas and the unconventional thought, because we're not going to get it from Conservative Inc. or Libertarian Inc. or any of it. We're not going to get it from the incorporated talking heads. We are only going to get it from people who are willing to buck the system, and like we already said, are willing to die a martyr to be able to save everybody else.
For sure. And to be clear, just you have my email. Just get in touch with me. I can set that up. Adam is a very good friend of mine, and I still schedule for his show, Adam versus the Man. And so, and when and if he does decide to run for president again, I will be his press secretary again. The only caveat to that I have is there are some people that I could find support for as well. But because I've seen a growth in that manner. For those that are watching and like what I've had to say and want to learn a little bit more, I do strongly suggest you check out my YouTube channel. I have two wonderful, and one of them has been on this show before, but I have two wonderful co-hosts, Chad Lemoyne from Louisiana, who is just... he makes me look dumb most of the time. He is just a brilliant man. And Nico, who is a 23-year-old black man who I wish I had his thinking when I was 23. I was too busy chasing tail and getting drunk. And I really wish that I had his understanding of reality when I was his age. But check us out on YouTube at Aquarian Anarchy, and I am at Aquarian Anarchy on Twitter. And look us up. We're everywhere. We have been interviewing movers and shakers in the freedom movement, and our number one focus is on people that have solutions. We don't want to just talk this game. We want to offer, how do you do this? How do you do this without a state? Or how do you deal with this issue? And we've brought people on that discuss that. We also discuss spiritual topics. As I said before, I'm not a Christian. I'm a very deeply religious man, but I'm not a Christian. Nico isn't a Christian, but Chad is. And we have very nice conversations. And I think the most important thing is to come with each other with respect and understanding that we're all trying to get to the same place.
I agree. I love you guys' show because you guys have the unconventional topics. I just got told by Saul G and Corey Frazier that I'm not allowed to come on their new show that they're doing, which is totally going to buck pretty much all of the taboos that we have in society. And they said I'm not allowed to do it because it would absolutely torch my campaign.
No, that's probably true. You gotta watch that, man. You know what? You in this particular situation, you can be like, I had that anarchist guy on. He was nice. I liked him. He was nice, but I'm not an anarchist. You can be like, I wanted to present his point of view. Stand back. I get what, and shout out to them as well. They have been amazing friends to our channel as well. Saul and Corey are awesome, and check out. Are you on what is it, Libre TV?
Yeah, I'm actually, right after I get off here, I've been slacking with uploading my new videos because like right after I get off work, I do my podcast and then I got to go be daddy and everything. So I keep forgetting to upload right after, and I can't. Once they expand, I can go live. But up until then, it's going to be, I'm going to be uploading as soon as I get off tonight. It is there, that app, for anyone who hasn't checked it out. I'll post the banner right here in the bottom corner. It is LibreTV.co. It is worth a check, worth a look. They are doing a sports channel. They have the Giancore Project. They have Aquarian Anarchy, Blue Collar Intellectual, Brown Paper Bag Podcast, the Purple Pill Politics, Corrected Felon Podcast, and the new Kamikage Podcast. And I believe Wasted Talent is about to be on there as well.
Jonesy.
Along with their, I can't remember their new show, but I know
is it the
like,
comic one?
No, the one that's like completely taboo.
Oh, okay.
I know we had talked about it, and obviously when they told me that I couldn't come on, and at first my feelings were hurt, and then I realized that they were just trying to keep me out of trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Just trying to keep me out of trouble so that I can still try to go to DC and make some changes before I get to the point where I consider DC just beyond. Critical Inception is their new show.
Cool.
So yeah, can't go on there because I have to make it to DC to go and try and make some changes.
Man, you got me convinced. If I lived in your district, I'd vote for you.
Hey,
I'd actually come and vote for you, man.
I appreciate it. I got a lot of work to do up here. I got to figure out how to make I'm not tech savvy, so I got to work my website and try to figure out how to operate it and stuff. But it is what it is. I mean, we all have our challenges in life. I'm great with my hands. I'm great with my mind. I'm just not so good with the Terminator stuff that we have here.
For sure. Well, thanks again for having me on, man.
thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. You were absolutely spectacular.
Well, thank
And
you.
I hope we get to do this again. Hopefully we can have your boys on too next time,
yeah.
and we can do a full-on panel because both of them are absolutely fantastic. I've talked to Chad too. I was going to have him on here soon as well, and I got to get in contact with Hotep and the rest of the gang and have them on because
Nice.
the people from this space and this freedom movement need to be the ones elevated. I think we've had enough of the grifter magic and throughout the freedom movement, and hopefully if we all team up together we can form one giant robot and take all the grifters out all at once.
Absolutely. The Freedom Voltron, man.
I will take it. That is going to be my 1980s throwback for the night. You have a good night, brother, and I hope to
Thanks
have you
again.
back soon. Everyone go check out Aquarian Anarchy on Twitter and on YouTube. It is definitely worth the follow. These guys are doing fantastic work.
Thanks.
And, of course, on LibreTV.co. All right? God bless, brother, and you have a great night.
Stay free.
All right, everyone, that was episode 19 of the Blue Collar Intellectual Podcast. I'm going to leave you with the going out music. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends. We're trying to spread a liberty message, and hopefully we can grow the movement and change how people think and actually get things done. I'll give you more information about the campaign coming up in the next episode. Episode 20 is going to be a sports episode. All right, we're just going to have some fun.
And what kind of player am I? Am I an offensive man or a defensive man? That's right, I'm neither. I play my opponent. If he likes to attack, I force him to defend himself. If he's a cautious man, I draw him into dangerous water. See, you get so frustrated playing defensive positions, you make stupid moves you never make if you were thinking. When you come here, boy, check that shit at the door,
I'm at the top of my game, cut the check. Somebody better king me, I'm the best. Let's play a game of checkers. Better yet, the game don't love nobody. Let's play chess.